Hi, my name is Peter Wakeman. I grew up on a farm in Canterbury. It's the oldest of 5 children. I learned how to fly and I did flights within New Zealand before learning how to fly internationally, doing a course in Long Beach, California to fly the MD-87, which I did for a Singapore Airlines subsidiary called Tradewinds, which changed its name to Silkia. On returning to New Zealand, I got international traffic rights to start my own airline between New Zealand and Australia, and I ran into some geopolitical problems with the New Zealand government. But however, I did succeed getting former late Minister Rob Story to convince the Australians to allow more than one airline from each country to operate between New Zealand and Australia. And I also had problems with the former Minister Maurice Williamson, who got a fax from the Australians to say that the agreement between New Zealand and Australia was cancelled by fax. So both Air New Zealand and myself wanted the New Zealand government to go to arbitration, but the New Zealand government didn't want to do it. So one wonders who calls the shots on New Zealand, whether it's Australia or whether it is America. Excuse me. So I first bought a house in Tauranga in 1993 in Arundel Street for $95,000. And the next place I bought in Tauranga was at Papamoa Beach in Dixon Road, and currently I don't own either property in Arundel Street or Dixon Road, but I have lived in the Bay of Plenty 2 times, once in 1993 and the last time was in Papamoa Beach. Currently I'm living in Christchurch and standing for the Tauranga by-election as an independent candidate, and what I wish to achieve for Tauranga would also benefit the rest of New Zealand. So the idea of removing goods and services tax, GST, from our taxation system would reduce the price of new housing, which has a 15% GST on it. It would remove GST, from our power bill, our rates bill, and the food that we go buying our necessities. So I would like to replace that with a financial transactions tax. In order to achieve this, I actually have to have some success with my ideas, and my ideas need your backing. As a political candidate, parties respond to the numbers, whether it's the numbers who vote in an election or the numbers of members of Parliament who can vote for legislation for or against. It's all about the numbers. So I'm asking you to give me your vote instead of a Tweedledum or a Tweedledee, so you can have an independent person representing you in Tauranga. The idea at the moment is if you or I go to the Official Information Act, we can write to any government or central government agency, and 20 working days they have to respond. But some people are exempt to the Official Information Act in the form of the Governor General, the Audit Office, and also the Ombudsman. So I would be able to get answers through written questions when Parliament is sitting within 14 days. Currently, I have complaints of some of the requests that I've been making to these government agencies not being answered. So my goal currently at the moment that I have been working on, rather than spreading COVID or catching COVID, in my view, with the way that the health situation is at the moment, is trying to get the New Zealand government to stop supporting or funding Ukraine, which in my view has neo-Nazis in it, in their government and also in their military battalions. And the US and the UK seem to want to continue to give Ukraine weapons, and that is going to result in more Ukrainians, Russians and civilians being injured or killed, rather than going through the diplomatic procedures to try and have a diplomatic resolution, and Russia has been tried for diplomatic resolutions, but the governments of NATO have put missiles around Russia's border and want to carry on supplying weapons rather than trying to seek a diplomatic resolution. So the sanctions have caused our fuel price to go up. They're going to cause our food prices to go up. So I believe our New Zealand government is supporting neo-Nazis by funding Ukraine to buy arms. They're also sanctioning Russia, which is working against our interests by increasing fuel. And if you increase the fuel, that increases the inflation, reduces our buying power. And bearing in mind, fuel and food and commodities was going up before the Ukraine special operation by Russia. So I'm saying that we need to stop being a satellite part of the United States. And if you look at New Zealand and China, New Zealand's had politicians that have been politicians, members of parliament, and then they go on to be directors of Chinese-owned banks. Chinese influence in Fiji has resulted in their fishing rights being owned by China. And if we're going to supply resistance to the China agreement in Samoa, are we going to be fighting a nuclear war with China, as well as supplying arms to the Ukraine, who's fighting another nuclear power in the form of Russia? So I just think New Zealand government needs to look after New Zealanders rather than being fodder for the US in the form of New Zealanders dying in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and joining the US military industrial complex by supporting their weapons manufacturing. I just think we've got to have free education so people can get ahead in New Zealand without getting debt. And if we have lots of debt on offer for education, less New Zealanders want to get educated. So I ask you in this by-election to vote for Peter Wakeman, who is an independent. I'm last on the ballot paper, Wakeman, W-A-K-E-M-A-N. You also can see some of the comments I have made to Sun Live. You click on their page for election debate and you click on Peter Wakeman. You also can Google me and see some YouTube videos, and this video will also be put up onto my YouTube channel. So I think it's very important that Tweedledum or Tweedledee are not elected in this by-election. You elect someone new to represent your interests, not beholden to a political party. And if you can ask all your friends to join you for voting for Peter Wakeman, to tell their friends and so on, we'll have a new independent member